Hello, and welcome to this video where we will discuss the competitive situation facing Louis Vuitton within the European luxury leather goods industry. In order to get a broad view of the industry, we will be working with three levels of analysis. We will start with the macro environment and use the pestle framework to identify the key drivers of change. Then we will look at the industry environment using Porter's 5 forces analysis. Finally, we will look at one of Louis Vuitton's direct competitors to see how the competition in the industry will affect Louis Vuitton. Through these three levels of analysis, we will identify several opportunities and threats that are present in the industry. When looking at the macro environment, it is important to consider factors from all 6 areas of the pestle framework. This includes political. For example, this could include the EU trade agreements. Next, there are economic factors, including exchange rates and shifts in income levels of customers. We also look at social factors, like the fashion trends or customers' buying habits. We also include technological factors, for example, online shopping or production machinery. Environmental factors also come into play. These could include the use of green energy at facilities or how the climate change can affect the availability of raw materials. Finally, we take into account the legal factors such as regulations on pollution or labor laws in different countries. By looking at all of the areas of the pestle framework, some factors begin to appear in multiple categories and would have a strong impact on Louis Vuitton and other companies in their industry. These factors become the key drivers of change. As you can see in the decision memo, I have identified 3 key drivers of change, which are public opinion of the industry's practices, an economic crisis in Europe, and shifts in the shopping trends and behaviors of customers. Let's start by talking about the public opinion of the industry's practices. This includes ethical consumerism, which is defined as the practice of purchasing products and services produced in a way that minimizes social and/or environmental damage, while avoiding products and services deemed to have a negative impact on society or the environment. This can be things like the use of green energy or a company's waste and pollution policies. Animal rights activists can also have an impact on public opinion with campaigns for ethical treatment of animals or boycotts for animal products. Finally, a company's labor practices can influence public opinion. For example, use of child labor would have a detrimental effect on a company, whereas a company who promotes scholarships for its employees is often viewed as an ethical company and customers may be more likely to choose their products over a competitor. The second key driver of change that is likely to affect Louis Vuitton is the economic crisis in Europe. If we see the predicted decline in the Eurozone that was discussed in The Economist in October, we are also likely to see a decrease in demand for luxury goods. The customer segments most likely to be immediately affected would be the accessible and the aspirational customers, as their purchases often make up a greater percentage of their income. We know that as a customer's income decreases, their demand for products will also decrease. The third key driver of change that I have identified is the shift in shopping trends of customers. This includes the rise in popularity of online shopping. This can present a challenge to companies who pride themselves on quality of service because it can be difficult to maintain that personal shopping experience on a computer. The focus online is much more on the bottom line, whereas when you bring a customer into a store, it's easier to distract them from the price tag with personal service and overall feel of the store. We've also seen a rise in tourism shopping. According to the case study, over 1/3 of the sales in Europe in 2011 were made to Chinese tourists. This can be a result of many factors, such as high import tariffs in China, which cause the prices to be higher, or even something like the added value of buying a bag abroad that can be the ability to talk about your vacation when someone compliments your bag. Finding a way to capitalize on tourism shoppers can be a great opportunity for Louis Vuitton. Next, we will look at the industry and the environmental factors influencing it. To do this, I used Porter's 5 forces analysis. I started by looking at the threat of entry, which for the European luxury leather goods industry is relatively low due to the limited access to supply and distribution channels that new companies can expect, as well as the high risk of retaliation from current companies. This would cause a new company to reconsider trying to enter the industry, so therefore the threat is low. The threat of substitutes is moderately high, as there are several luxury brands within the industry, as well as cheaper options who would fulfill the same need of having a handbag that the luxury bags fill. The other need to consider is the desire to have a luxury good, where there are several substitutes that a customer could turn to if this is their sole reason for purchasing a luxury bag. The next area to look at with the 5 forces analysis is buyer's power. In my analysis, I have also set this moderately high because of the low switching costs for customers. However, there is next to no buyer competition threat, meaning that it is unlikely that the customer will decide to create their own bags. And since most luxury companies own their own retail stores, there is no threat that a middleman will decide to use backwards vertical integration. Next, we look at suppliers' power, which I have set at a low level due to the fact that the suppliers are not concentrated, and according to my research, it is very common for a luxury company to acquire their suppliers so that the competition threat is very low. In addition, there are not high switching costs for the company. For example, changing from one zipper supplier to another would have very little impact on the final product, as long as they were of the same quality. Finally, we have the competitive rivalry within the industry. In this industry, it is very high due to the competitor balance being mostly dominated by only 3 parent companies who own the majority of the luxury brands. There is also relatively low differentiation aside from the name on the label. Most leather handbags are similar in structure and design, with a few key differences to set them apart slightly. When we look at this information graphically, we get something that looks like this, where the closer to the center of force is located, the higher amount of threat is present in the industry. My final level of analysis was to look at one of Louis Vuitton's direct competitors, Gucci. Gucci's role in the industry is as a market challenger. They also produce luxury handbags priced between $850 and $4,700, with most products in the range of $1,000 to $3,000. Gucci's target customer segment is the aspirational and accessible customers. They seem to have adopted a bypass attack strategy and are therefore not challenging Louis Vuitton, the market leader, on the absolute segment of customers. This focus on a specific target segment that differs from their competition is one of Gucci's strengths, along with their brand reputation for quality. Their weaknesses include being reliant on retailers and using discounts to sell their goods, which can lead people to wait for the expected sales and not purchase items at full price. Based on this information, we can see some of the opportunities within the luxury leather goods industry. These include maintaining the absolute customer segment. This group of customers is fairly stable, and their intention to buy luxury goods is not going to diminish easily. China also presents a large opportunity for companies in this industry to expand their market and in the process attract new customers. As discussed earlier, developing the online shopping experiences can be a great opportunity for companies if it's done well. This kind of service could enable more customers to have access to the products without needing to live in an area where the shops are located. There is also, of course, an opportunity for innovation of new materials, as well as working on differentiation of products, which can complement the leather goods. Some of the threats that need to be considered include the aspirational and accessible customer segments, specifically how they would be impacted by an economic downturn. Companies need to consider how they can maintain this customer base's demand in any situation. Another threat can be counterfeit products that could negatively impact the value of the real products. This has become a bigger problem in the past several years, and companies need to come up with a method to counteract this situation. Next, while it can be an opportunity, online shopping can also be considered a threat if it means a decrease in the quality of service that companies are able to provide. Brand loyalty can also become a threat, and figuring out a tactic to maintain their customer base and instead of having them switch from, for example, Louis Vuitton to Gucci is important for companies. And finally, in an industry like this, maintaining a product line that is also within the current fashion trends can prove to be a threat to many companies. In conclusion, we can see from the Porter's 5 Forces analysis that the European luxury leather goods industry is a very attractive industry for Louis Vuitton to continue competing in. However, for new companies, it is quite unattractive to try to enter. We have seen that there is a minimal threat of frontal attack from competitors. However, Louis Vuitton needs to be constantly aware of potential flank and bypass attack strategies that competitors may utilize. We have also discussed many opportunities that Louis Vuitton can use to grow their business, as well as identifying some threats that the company should always be aware of. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. If you have any questions, I will be available to answer them at our meeting on Thursday. Thank you, and see you soon.